Hello, my name is Kevin, and this is Kevin Talks Tech. I currently live in Red Deer and operate a home-based business called Kevin the Tech Guy, where I help people better understand and use their technology, your technology, with how-tos, explainers, and paid subscription content, as well as podcasts like this one. I love talking to other home business owners and small business owners, or just people that find fascinating about how you use technology. In this episode, we're going to hear from Chris Alemany. Chris lives in Port Alberni, BC on Vancouver Island. Lucky guy. He's a university instructor as well as a computer technician at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo. He's also a geek who loves to tinker, most recently with his own Mastodon instance. We talk about that in the podcast. An instance is basically a server. He's also spearheading a federal petition to get more politicians on Mastodon, as opposed to a single website, a single company that is controlled by Facebook, a company like Facebook or Twitter. This is a corporate giant where we're at their whims, we're at their mercy. And it is long overdue for our politicians and frankly anyone in power to not be beholden to corporate giants. We talk about a lot more than that though. All right, here we go. Chris Alemany in Port Alberni, BC. Hello, Chris. Is it Alemany? Is that how you say that?
Yeah, Alemany. Yeah.
Alemany.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sincerely, thank you for being a guest on my podcast for this episode. I've had nothing but fun interacting with you on Mastodon, so it's a real pleasure to call you a friend.
Yeah, no, this is good times, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being on Kevin Talks Tech. I'm a little rusty here because it's been a couple of years since I did my last episode because life got in the way. But as have been talking there for a little while on Mastodon, it became very clear to me I need to talk to this guy.
There's always, I don't know, Mastodon it's been such a great experience, having switched over from the Twitterverse along with everybody else back last 2 Novembers ago now. But yeah, it's just been a great community. And you're one of the people that has come out, and just makes it a great place to talk to people and talk about technology.
Absolutely. We talked about how we could talk about technology all day long before we started here, but I could have been a good pre-show, but I apologize I didn't record that. But with Mastodon and that whole that led to it, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. Obviously, Twitter is still around. I will not call it X, but that's what some people want to call it.
The opposite mind. I'm like, oh, just call it X. It doesn't deserve to be called Twitter because Twitter used to be a good place. It's never been a good place.
Again, I don't really want to go down the rabbit hole of that whole psychology and philosophy, even though I could and I want to. It's not really. I don't. It's a sore spot for people,
Totally.
But the way I use. I'll just say this: the way I continue to use Twitter, though not to the same extent I used to. I still use it and think of it the same way. I don't give a damn who's in charge. He's probably going to run into the ground. I will not name him. He'll probably run into the ground, but I pray, if I can say that it'll be sold off for parts, or he'll lose interest and somebody else will take over and do justice with it that it so deserves, to make it a better version of what it was. It has been so good to me. There's good, there's bad, as in the internet in general, but Twitter has been absolutely fantastic. I've made so many connections. I've made business connections there, kept informed. The conversations are wonderful, and any social media platform is nothing without its users.
Yeah, no, totally.
So this little in-between stage, which there's nothing else it can be, this little in-between stage of where it's a toxic dumpster fire, in a lot of ways, I'm still getting a lot of value out of it. And I'm confident, give it a year, give it 5, it will become a better version of what it used to be, or it'll die off. And with any luck, frankly, the way things should be, and the way Twitter should have been from the start, is to be like Mastodon, we call it the Fediverse, but
Yep.
that public square where it's not controlled by a single entity. We're not as I posted today, we're not at the whim. We wouldn't be at the whims, and we are not at the whims of corporate social media giants who do what they please. And Mastodon is what Twitter should have been.
Yeah.
And it was a mistake to depend and to rely on those companies and build them up the way it was done. Not our fault, but that's the way it was done.
Yep.
Again, it really comes back just to the community and the barriers to entry to get onto Mastodon, which I know makes some people hesitant, is the thing that makes it great. If people, I'll end this particular point with this, and I've said it, and I'll be posting actually a lengthy column, if you will, but a post that I created for my paid subscribers once that launches here in a couple of weeks. So if you're listening to this later, it's probably already there. Sign up for $5 a month and you can read it. But just the essence of what Mastodon is. And in the past, I think it's been a year. How long has it been? Feels like a year, maybe a little bit over a year, that it's really taken off.
Like 15 months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it started off small, if you will, of couple 100,000 people is small. And it's grown to worldwide 14 million users. Not all are of the same quality because people are people and there are bots and different things. But the point that I make in my post is a few months ago, but more so now, the number of active users on Mastodon as a whole is, when it was at even at just 9 million, that was the peak of the number of users, the peak of how many people in the United States were active on Twitter. And that was we all saw the value at that point in time when that was happening. So it's nothing to seize that. And I'm just thrilled, and I hope that if nothing else, Mastodon takes over. And if Twitter does go away, then people can migrate to it even more than they have.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think you're right. I think we're in an in-between space, a really interesting in-between space, because Meta thinking about how to connect to the Fediverse, to the Mastodon, and to all the rest, how to potentially connect with Blue Sky and all of that. And I think we've passed the point of no return now, where there's enough people thinking that, okay, this decentralized kind of model not only is better for all sorts of sort of moral reasons and things like that, but sustainably, technologically, as far as technology is concerned, I think it's a more sustainable model than the corporate monolith that we have now. Right?
Correct. Absolutely. Could not agree with you more wholeheartedly. The issue, and I bring this up because it's been, not to spend the entire episode on Mastodon, but people need to understand that these social media networks that we've come to know, to familiarize ourselves with, to use on a regular basis, they are advertiser funded, and for that matter, they sell off our data. So with Mastodon, and it's not just Mastodon on the Fediverse, it's a universe, hence the name. It's a collection of various services that run on that framework, on that foundation. And I hope I described that pretty well in my post, along with the graphic that's there that I grabbed off Mastodon. Mastodon, my final point on that particular part is it's user supported. It's donations make it happen. So if you give me $5 a month or 50 or whatever a person can afford, when you have, as mstdn.ca, run by the wonderful Chad Oman, I hope I'm saying his name right, that the servers, to keep the lights on, to keep this instance, as it's called, the server, running, is because of our support and our support alone. And that's what makes it great, because then we're not beholden to any advertisers or anybody else. So I just wanted to get that out there and say that beyond my post.
Yep.
So I think I have a pretty good idea of what brought you to Mastodon, and I hope I have given a good impression of what brought me to it. I use them all, but I love Mastodon, and particularly mstn.ca. And on that note, I want to get to this maybe now, maybe later. It's up to you in terms of your petition. But there's a few things I'd like to get to first, if I may.
Sure, go for it.
You got my list of questions, so hopefully you've had time to think about that a little bit.
Yep.
I guess we'll start at the beginning. Please, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? You mentioned your IT business. Well, you did actually, pardon me, before we started recording, but you can tell me about that. I'd like to know what motivated you to either start that, because I was a little uncertain at the time whether you were self-employed or worked for somebody else, but what got you into it? And I'd love to know why you do it.
Yeah, no, it's so my main employment is actually at Vancouver Island University
Hmm.
in Nanaimo,
Wow.
BC.
Awesome.
I'm a computer technician there.
Oh,
I also, and that's my main gig. It's great. It's really wonderful.
I've been there
And
actually.
have you?
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's a great spot. Were you there when it was VIU or Malaspina or
VIU. I wasn't a
yeah,
student, certainly
yeah,
wasn't a teacher, nor did I work there. When Mom and I decided she wanted to try living there for maybe even retire there, so we spent a year and a half, and we were going to either choose Nanaimo or the Comox Courtney area to live. So we checked it. We ended up checking out Nanaimo first, and we spent a couple of hours walking around the Vancouver Island University
nice.
campus. So
It's a beautiful campus.
it is.
It's great up on the hill and looking out over the strait and stuff. But yeah, so that's my day job. But
Yeah.
I do technology there. I'm a tech technician in the media studies program. So we do all sorts of video production and that kind of thing. And my training though is more on the computer support,
Hmm.
web server, admin. That's what my real bread and butter and sort of happy place is in a command
Wonderful.
line of all
Oh my
things.
goodness, yes.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Which
So,
is funny
so
for a Mac
you,
guy,
you
I
you
guess.
said you were in
Yeah.
IT doing support before you got to Vancouver Island University. Can you give us kind of the backstory there?
Yeah, I've had a business, just a self-employed sort of business name for a long time, and it's just really supporting people.
Nailed it, by the way. Nailed it.
And that's what brings me joy is, and it's in the classroom too at VIU,
Hmm.
is I get to help people do technology things. And it doesn't really matter if it's Windows or Mac, although
Yeah.
I'm a definite Mac Apple guy. I used Mac since and Atari ST before then, which was basically Mac but not quite Mac. But yeah, so I've been helping people with technology for a long time,
How long did you
and it's
how long did you do that?
oh, I it's still today. I still have it as a business, just on the side, helping people. I often go make house calls
Hmm.
or do stuff over the phone or whatever,
But like
just to help people
how
out.
many years have you been at it?
Oh, probably 20 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, probably 20 years. I've been at VIU for yeah 19 years. So it'll been 20 years for the business. But yeah, so I've been around all this stuff for a long time, and really, it's always been about as far as my interaction with people, it's always helping people is what makes it fun. And then the other stuff, the weather website and the kind of web stuff, and that's where I get into the command line stuff and doing scripting for the web and backing up things and time lapses for webcams. I love that stuff. It's good
Yeah.
times.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at actually at Malaspina before it was Vancouver Island University. So I did a technology diploma there. They hired me back as their technician, and I haven't left since. It's been a great place to live and work and study. So yeah, oh,
Awesome. The next place I want to jump in my head is I know that you're not in Nanaimo. You were in Port Alberni. Were you born and raised there?
I definitely was. Yeah, I was born here. Yeah, goodness. So I was born here and then graduated from high school and moved away for probably 10 years or so. Did school and got started at VIU and stuff, and then just moved back with family. I have my parents are still here, and my wife's family all have moved up here. Yeah, we got all our family here and stuff. But yeah, it's a wonderful town. It's been a really interesting now that I'm in my mid 40s, going from when I was a kid and it was just coming out of being the highest earnings in Canada on average because everybody was employed at the mill or actually four mills.
Oh,
And ever since then, about the 1980s onwards, it's been a decline, really, as far as employment in town and just that general income level that people enjoyed here.
mhm.
And it's only really in the last 10, not even 15, really 10 years that it's finally started to come out of that depression, I think, and join a lot of the other communities around the south coast of Vancouver Island and BC and really come into the new economy. It's really it's a great place. It's really wonderful, obviously beautiful,
Mhm.
and always lots of stuff to do outside. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Mom and I, when we were on Vancouver Island, as I had mentioned, I think before we started recording, I should have recorded. We did not make it out to Port Alberni, but like I said, we spent time in Nanaimo and Courtney, and ended up in Courtney for a year and a half. And because Mom was trying to figure out if she wanted to retire on the island, and Vancouver and Victoria were out of the question. So
Yeah.
but so I wish we had, because for some reason I didn't even at the time, I don't know why I look at a map, but I didn't know what that Port Alberni was even there before we decided where we were going to be. And a big selling point for Mom, because she's in her 70s now, she really wanted public transportation. So I took a quick look at Port Alberni. As far as I can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like they have a bus system. They
We
do.
do have a bus system. It's not the world's greatest bus system, but it gets people around. What we really don't have, and this is the whole island in
Yeah.
general, is being able to go between communities. That's really where the huge gaps are,
Okay.
especially for people like your mom who retired and
Yeah.
maybe they don't want to drive anymore, or they have to
Yeah.
get to appointments and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard. It's really
Yes.
hard.
Even in Red Deer, it's difficult. We have a bus that drives by the house. When it takes, not to get into at the passion point, but in general though, even in Edmonton and Calgary, in these bigger cities, when it takes 3 times as long to get to where you want to go versus driving, we have a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sadly, I did not get to go to Port Alberni, but I did look it up before in preparation for this podcast. And like I say, it looks like a beautiful place. I'm glad
Yeah.
that there's some public transportation there. That's good. And I wish that we had visited. We actually ended up going down for some reason I can't recall, down to Duncan. Yeah, and then back up to Nanaimo, and then we had to jump on a plane and come back home before packing up and going to Courtney. That community ended up appealing to us the most at the time. So love Vancouver Island, and 10 years ago we could have afforded to live there.
Yep. Yep. Even 5 years ago, you could probably afford to live in Port Alberni. Now the price of houses has gone through the roof like everywhere else, but we're still apparently the most affordable ish on the South Island at least. So
Okay, well, the bus system is
it's all
interesting.
good.
That's interesting, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, the prices just skyrocketed. But it might be
Yeah.
worth looking at again, because again, we had it. I didn't see any indication that there was a bus service, but I'm glad that there's something there, because
Yep.
yeah, she's probably about 5 years time she'll stop driving. Is what we're looking at. Yeah, born and raised in Port Alberni. Obviously, you've been working in Nanaimo at Vancouver Island University, and have a bunch of side projects on the go. So maybe we could talk. I don't want to like rush the conversation, because I'm not. You touched on your weather projects on Mastodon for sure. You've touched on how you're moving your Mastodon instance, because anybody can have one, from where it was to a new home for it, and you have your reasons for that.
Yep.
There's one other thing I wanted to touch on about. Oh yeah, it's the petition. So we'll get to that too. So maybe you can give me a sense of those things in terms of Mastodon and what you're doing with that.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun. This whole self-hosting thing. It's a shame because my server
Mhm.
is what over this shoulder
Okay.
under this. You can actually see the stairs
Okay.
there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's right about here
All right.
under the stairs on an old iMac that was my step old 2008 iMac that I figured, oh, let's see if I could spin up a Mastodon instance. That'd be fun. So stuck Debian on it and went through the process. It's actually pinned on my Mastodon
Yes.
profile. People can find the how-to on how I did that. But
Which I'll link
it
to.
was a lot of fun.
I'll link to that, by the way.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I like doing that sort of how-to because it's really just me going through, okay, what step did I just do? And
So
then I write it all down.
let me back up. Let me back up a
Yeah.
second. So I can't remember the exact. Maybe it's your current. But it's the simplest way I'd like to think about Mastodon, the framework of it, as I said, without getting into too technical. I like to think of it like email, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
We've all had it at Hotmail, at Gmail, at whatever,
Yeah.
and so when you have and I'm by no means an expert on this, but I mentioned mstdn.ca, there's mastodon.social, there's these various things. So yours is
Yeah.
at Chris and then I honestly forget the rest off the top of my head. I think it's at is it Chris Alemany.ca?
Yeah, it's mstdn.chrisalemany.ca. Yeah,
At
yeah,
Chris
yeah.
at Chris at Mastodon dot chrisalemany.ca. Okay.
That's right. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. And really, what it is, like anything, you can, for a long time now, you've always been able to create your own website,
Yep.
chrisalemany.ca or
Right.
whatever. And now really it's just adding something onto that, because all really Mastodon is a website. It's a website with a database and a few other sort of fancy technical things. But as far as the technology is concerned, it's just a website on my little server down there. So for people who are technically able to do that sort of web server stuff, it's super simple. For people who are just using it, it's even more simple, because all they have to do is go to a web page, log into their Mastodon web page, whatever address that might be, and then all of a sudden they have a me
Mm.
at this web page. But yeah, it's just like a website. It's just like email, what have you. It's very, I think once people get over the notion that, oh no, I have to pick something, and realize that I've picked an email. We all do that all the time. Some of us have 20 emails. It's super common. So I don't think that'll be something that'll really trip people up for a long time. But just the notion of being able to, from a technology user point of view, and someone who really loves to play with this stuff, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to host my own social media space and have it still be connected to the wider world is great. That's exactly what I want to do.
Okay.
I have control.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Why did you choose to have your, aside from just the love of playing with this stuff, why did you choose to have your own server versus, for example, using mstdn.ca or the like?
Two reasons. Number one, the love of it, because I do. It's a lot of fun to be able to know that I'm doing that and I can play around with it. But two, it's the control. I can control my stuff. I can control what I see, what comes onto my computer or doesn't come onto my computer. I have full control of that. And it doesn't matter if I at some point, I love chat at mstdn.ca, and there's lots of others out there, and they deserve the donations that they
Yes.
need to keep it going. My system is $0 for me. Easy. It's easy. Yeah, no, mainly it comes down to having that kind of independent voice. I've always had a website or a blog or something. I've had a blog since, goodness, 2003-ish, maybe even before
Yeah,
that,
we're
2002.
about the same age, so
um,
I hear you on that.
yeah, I like to be able to have that control, and just being able to stay out of that corporate media space, and really just toxicity of the corporate space, and knowing that even if they did, if Threads comes in and
Mm,
Meta tries to harvest all of our data, which no doubt they will try to do, I can feel at least somewhat confident being on my own server, that I have some control over that, right? So that's really my motivation. I wouldn't certainly say anybody can go out as a regular user and create their own Mastodon instance.
no, no.
Not That's not on. But for anyone who does have any inkling of wanting to have that control, and feels comfortable taking it on, it's great to be able to do it.
Yes, I'll add to that. I I posted about this on Mastodon, but I tried to dabble and try to have my own Mastodon instance, as they're called, on my Synology NAS up there. It's at a frame, but it's on top of my desk hutch. So I found a couple of really good and detailed articles, blog posts that walk you through pretty much exactly what you need to do. And that's fantastic. That's the beauty of the internet. So I gave it a try, and I got it up and running, did my best, port forward the whole bit. And I just had this growing kind of feeling inside of me as I was doing it of, this is wonderful. I love to do something like this. This feels like something I want to do, but I am way over my head. I just didn't feel comfortable. And it's like the various steps in database, and I don't know, I can't remember all the terminology, but I know the things that you had to install, the plugins and et cetera, that you've done.
Yeah,
And I'm a very technical, very technical. The only thing I don't do is programming pretty much.
yeah.
I just don't have the mind for that. but I wanted to try to have my own Mastodon instance for the same reasons that you have yours, and you were partial inspiration for that, if I can say that. I didn't use your guide. I hadn't discovered that yet, but yeah, I gave it a try, and I just found it to be too much for me. That's why I continue to use proudly mstdn.ca and the wonderful Chad and a few of his other volunteers who keep that thing going, and the 35,000 users at this point in Canada. It's just a very lovely place to be. Very well managed, very well moderated. It's just pleasant.
Congratulations to him for being able to gather that many people in there, because I know, especially at the beginning, it was
Oh yeah,
rough. It
I
was
think I
rough.
think
He was trying to expand it as fast as he could, and it was a really rough little bit
honestly
there.
he I think I understand it if I recall back almost a year ago now. But the what stands out to me is one he said repeatedly, and he not one complaint out of him. He works full time. He has a day job just like you do, just like
Yeah,
many of us do. And he was doing that, and then he spent I don't know how many hours a day for weeks, if not months. But there were times where he was pulling 18-hour days with
yeah,
all the kind of different work that he does. Thankfully, he has the know-how and the experience as you do to put that together. And he actually has a blog post. I'll try to find in a link to it, where he describes why he decided to do it and how he never expected it to become what it has become and continues to be, and it would just grow and get better. But it was a real passion project for him that he started for himself for the
yeah,
same reasons you did, and then people discovered it. Things blew up at Twitter, and it was just timing, right?
yeah.
People were
Like
desperately looking for an alternative because every indication at that point in time said this is Twitter's going to die.
going
You know,
down in flames.
it's going down in flames. Where can I find my people? Thankfully, it hasn't gone quite that badly in terms of it dying yet, though I'm sure it's coming. Um, but anyway, to finish off my point, with mstdn.ca, um, there's definitely a learning curve to it.
Yeah,
All you I keep wanting to call it TweetDeck in my head out of pure habit, but it's the advanced. They call it advanced mode, and it is not as straightforward as TweetDeck was or is. Not to mention they call it Twitter Pro or X Pro or whatever the hell they call it. It's paid now. It's part of their premium offerings.
yeah,
But anyway, for Chad to put in his team now, a team of volunteers, he's a volunteer. He doesn't get paid. All of the money that's donated goes directly into the costs associated with running the server, with keeping this particular website, as you say, up and running. And it's magical. It's fantastic. It depends quite a bit on what, not corporate, but what the people who operate proper the different versions and the different settings that they implement. But it's very much it's a community feedback thing.
yeah.
It's not the corporate feel of take it or leave it.
Yeah, no, it's really nice to be able to have that space. And I know
Yeah.
there's a handful of other Canadian servers that have
Sorry.
grown
Yes.
over the past year too, right? Zeros.ca, I think
Yeah.
is one. And
The Canadian
um,
dot social, I think there is one. There's
yeah,
a couple of
yeah,
others. But
yeah,
what I was really getting to through my rant there was one of the main reasons I am there, and I would join any other server like it, is because I trust the people who operate it. I trust
yeah,
Chad, he's a friend, and the volunteers who are there, and the community that's there. If it was
yeah.
another corporate giant with that I didn't trust, I wouldn't be using it.
Yeah.
We've done that. Thank you very much. It didn't go well.
Yeah. And that's what it's always all about, right? It is all of these services. Even you go back to you go back to MySpace,
Yeah.
the really old stuff. It's always about trust. It's always about trust. It's always about some point everybody thought Jack Dorsey was walked on water, and
Mm,
Twitter would rule the world and it would be a wonderful utopian space. And at some point, I think that trust was lost, and certainly the trust has been lost with the current
yeah. Yeah.
owner. But isn't that's what it's all about, right? It's always about trust. So I think it's so much easier when you're in this decentralized space, whether it's Mastodon or PeerTube or all of the other Fediverse software out there. It'll always be about whether the person coming to that service can trust the person that's providing it, and that'll be the main thing that determines the success of the Fediverse, whether people will be able to find those places that they trust, that they'll be able to use it reliably, that they'll be able to connect with other people around the world, or just the communities that they want to talk to, right? And just be able to trust that that's going to happen. Yeah, it's funny how we it is it's that it's the notion of it's always a personal trust with
Yeah,
whoever happens to be
yeah,
running those services that really determines whether we want to use them or not.
absolutely. One final point, and then I'm going to move on to the other topics here that we have. So, what you said there about connecting with the communities you want to talk to, right? The people you want to talk to, like-minded people, maybe, but the
Not
communities
always.
that you want to be a part of, and it's okay to
Yeah,
disagree on things, and that's the
yeah,
so.
yeah,
I'd say the quality of conversation is dramatically better. It's better than Twitter on Threads, but Mastodon's the place to go for the conversation. Nothing about there is no algorithm
yeah,
at Mastodon. You're not racing for likes and retweets and all these different things to have your post be seen. You don't
yeah,
have you don't feel this obligation. I guess I better pay them for somebody to see this.
yeah,
um, if you post it, the people following you will see it technically, because if they're not right in front of it might scroll down by too fast and you miss it, but it's there. You can go, if you think about it, you
yeah.
can go to their profile, see it, and things like this. So there is no algorithm. I know you know this, but I just wanted to express that it doesn't have that corporate mentality of make endless amounts of money to appease the shareholders and have that be the goal versus having it be a lovely community to be a part of and to make those connections. There's just it's just so much better. Engagement is the word that's often used, but just the conversations.
Totally. I've had better and engagement and honestly likes and boosts and all that stuff than on Mastodon than I ever had on Twitter.
Yep.
And I actually think it's because there is no algorithm, and because the people who have ended up following me and I've followed them, we've done it because we genuinely are interested in that content. So you do naturally like it or
Yeah.
boost it or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's really ironic that
Yeah.
a lot of people stick to Twitter because they believe the engagement and that ability to get the message out would somehow be lost on a service,
Yeah.
whatever it is, Mastodon or whatever, that might not have an algorithm. But in fact, I think it's exactly the opposite. I think as long as you put in the time to build that fellowship
And that's
or
what
then
people don't want to do.
following,
They don't want to do
that's
that.
what, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And man, November 2020, was it 2022? Yeah,
I
when
think
it
it was
when it
2022.
all
Yeah, yeah, a
when
year
it
ago.
all blew up.
Oh, a little.
It was like 1998. For those of us who are old enough
That's right.
to remember, it was like I felt like I was clicking through websites like it was Yahoo or something. Like there was this discovery to it,
Yes.
which I'm sure only applies because I remember that time. It was fantastic, and it's still like that,
Yeah, the
right?
thing that helped me and many others until the you know certain owner shut it down was there were certain tools that would grab whoever the heck you were following on Twitter and basically do the cross reference
Yeah,
to whoever was already using Mastodon or a server using the Mastodon framework. And so it would do that automatically, and then it would follow those people for you. So that's how it got started for me. It was a couple, I think it was, I want to say a couple hundred, but not a lot because again, it was basically brand new. But that's what got me started. And but that's the I know for a fact. I hear it all the time, be it on Twitter or elsewhere in different articles, with the normal people out there where they've spent 20 years using this thing called Twitter, where they have connected with hundreds of people or thousands, and it's really tough to move that over to move because
totally.
unless
Yeah,
there's a bunch of people, organizations, governments, you name it, who have not made that switch or not created or also using Mastodon as it were. So they stay on Twitter because it still works.
yeah.
It's I don't know, good enough is the term to use, but that's where the people are. And when you're starting from scratch, that's always a big ask.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm grateful that we've done it, but like I say, it takes work. And in this day and age, with the stresses that everybody's under right now, it's a lot to ask. So
yeah,
I hope that people will sign up have a look around, get to know it. You didn't learn Twitter overnight. No, you didn't.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
no, you didn't. Okay, you didn't. So if you can spend the time, yes, starting from scratch in some cases, to build up that community, maybe eventually it'll justify where you switch to it. But it is better once you can get past that or get to that point. So I just wanted to quickly say that it's the we certainly don't want to minimize things here at all. So whether it's switching to Mastodon, many people use all of them. I still use Twitter for different reasons, but it's the especially I would say for normal, because normal people aren't going to make their own server, but even for the technical, somewhat technical people, where you don't just say, okay, I built my own server. There is a laundry list of steps there you need to go through to get that up and going. It's worth it.
Totally. Yeah. No,
But
totally. It's
it's
a big it's a big leap.
it's a
Yeah.
big leap, and it's
Yeah.
complicated. It's a public facing server.
Yeah.
So you'd be very careful and do things properly, and that's could be overwhelming for a lot of people, which is why, once again, I strongly recommend, I know we strongly recommend any instance, but mstdn.ca. I don't think you want people joining yours even if they can, or maybe they can't.
No, the registrations are not open.
Got it.
Sorry.
Got it. Yeah. But at least you can trust MSTDN and the like, and all linked to those. So a little more time was spent on Mastodon than I wanted to, but I wanted to do anything I could to help get the word out and talk to a fellow geek while I'm doing it to bounce ideas off of and kind
Do
of
you want to talk about the petition? Seems like a
in.
segue.
Yes, I was trying to find the I was stalling there just for a second, but I meant every word I said. Yes, I was looking for a segue, but go ahead, tell us about your petition, Chris, because it's awesome.
It is awesome, and it's not just me. I have to say there's so for people who aren't aware,
Please.
there's a petition if you are Canadian and a Canadian. I believe you have to be a Canadian resident to sign the petitions on the Parliament's website, ourcommons.ca. Petition number 4769 E4769. And what it is asking the government itself,
Hmm.
Parliament itself, to create a server, a Mastodon or a Fediverse, some sort of open social media service that parliamentarians can use.
Yeah.
So whether it's your MPs or your senators or officers of parliament, people who are trying to communicate with the public, it's about Parliament having that ability to control its own social media space. So yeah, this was an idea that came out of the woodwork around at the end of November, this past November. And I talked to Chad and some other folks who are prominent on Canadian Mastodon,
Yeah.
and we all thought that an idea worth kind of pursuing. And so yeah, so we came up with the wording, and I threw it at my MP,
Lord John.
Johns,
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic guy, Courtney Alberni, and it was actually great. And he's a fantastic MP and a really nice guy, not a technologist, which is fine, right?
Which is I'm on those types.
He's different. He's a regular guy, and that's totally awesome. But it was hilarious because I sent it in, and we were all excited, and we have to have five people support it. So we had our little group there
Okay.
to support it, and then it gets sent to the MP
Hmm.
so that they can authorize it, so that it can actually go onto the website and become live. So it sat there and it sat there and it sat there, and I emailed Gord and I was like, "What do you think about the petition?" And I
Yeah.
finally saw him, literally in a shop
Okay.
around Christmas, and he's like, Chris, I don't know what it meant. I didn't understand. I just couldn't in good conscience approve it because I didn't know what was going on. So we got to have a talk. So,
In
so
fairness, that deserved a reply, if nothing else. Saying something to that
oh, he did.
effect.
His staff was back and
Okay,
forth and
okay.
stuff, so
It
it
did-
was all good. But
okay.
yeah, no. So it was super funny. So we had a really good chat about it, and you might notice that Mastodon isn't mentioned in the petition,
It's
and there
not.
was there's a really good reason for that, and it was actually something that Gord brought up because this is something that'll be presented in Parliament in the House of Commons. So it needs to be of a rhetorical nature, easily debated and things. And his point and it made a lot of sense, was if you put a specific technology that you have to go to, we must use Mastodon.
Right.
That's a lot harder to justify than just saying Twitter is a bit of a hellscape, Facebook is supporting genocide and things. It's easy to say the negative stuff in Parliament because people get that, and we can move to something that's a little more open, something that Parliament controls. It was easier that way rhetorically, I think, not to have something specific in there as far as software, and just say it would be very good for Parliament as a whole to have control over its social media, for parliamentarians to be able to speak from a place that's trusted and can be verified by all Canadians, right? We know if it's coming from a parl.gc.ca address, then we can trust that's the real thing. So that was really where I think we landed, as far as that's the message we want to put out, is Parliament needs to have control over Parliament's words.
Yeah, and as we stated before, where they're not they wouldn't be at the mercy of whatever Facebook or I guess Meta or Twitter or anybody else, whatever those
Yeah,
companies want to do with their platforms. When government controls their own, just like they control their own website
yeah,
or their own
or
email.
email. Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
They control that. They're not at the mercy of, oh, geez, Facebook just did this or
yeah,
Twitter just did this. What the hell do we do? It's better to have where they have that control over it. And again, people can trust it.
yeah, totally. So it's been great. I hope people can sign on to it. It's going to be up for it's 90 days, so it's got what 80 something days left. So people
Yeah.
can go to the website and sign it, and
And I should note
hopefully
that's
get
in
lots of people.
how many signatures, if you will, are it's over 500 now, right?
Yeah, we got, so we're at, what are we at? I'm just looking over here.
Yeah.
We're at 613.
That's in a matter of days.
Yeah, yeah, really, that all happened on, goodness, that all happened Monday, Tuesday almost. Was we ended up getting 500, because the 500 you need in order to actually have it be presented to the House of Commons. So that's a minimum. So we got that, bam. It was great. The
The
response from
response,
the
like,
Canadian
yeah,
Mastodon universe was really great.
it's been phenomenal. I think there's a real desire to see this happen.
Yeah, yeah. I hope, and you have to temper expectations a little, because I think we've had some really good chats with. Oh goodness, I have her handle in my head and not her actual name. Paula,
Paula
the
Simons,
senator there. Yeah,
yeah,
from Alberta, the
she's been a
senator.
huge advocate for Mastodon. Actually, she has.
Yeah, she's been really good, but she also said, to temper expectations, because House of Commons petitions can create conversations, but they don't
Yeah,
often create the change that they're
yeah.
hoping for, which is fine. That's how petitions are all the
And
time. But
honestly, that's how the
um,
system works.
totally,
Uh,
totally,
I don't pretend to fully understand politics or parliament, but goodness knows there is a process. So
yep,
there's tons of conversation happening in government. We all know that, for better or for worse.
yep, yep,
uh, so to have that back and forth conversation and to get that started, where and to see where that goes, for that, hopefully the next steps, be it, I don't know how soon change could happen, or how fast that progress is going to move. Usually in government it takes years, but I see it happening. I really truly do.
yeah. No,
And
I agree. I think it will. I think it will happen, only because it's inevitable that government will want to. They'll want to have that control,
yeah,
and not from a big brother point of view, but just from an email point of view and from a
yeah,
web point of view. They'll just be like, we do this for email and web.
yeah,
Why aren't we doing this for social media? Like, this makes a lot of sense. And it's not, they won't be controlling. They don't control
yeah,
what people say on their email or anything.
yeah.
It's
I
just
look at,
a service that they need to provide, right?
yeah. From my perspective, I don't see how you and I, how others use Mastodon to be the problem. I see again, the learning curve to get there, and
Yeah,
especially when you're talking about normal people, but even politicians, where they're not the most very normal people, very intelligent in their own right, and most of them, many of them are fantastic and do excellent work, but technically savvy, many are not. Uh, I'm not even sure Paul is. I could be wrong, but she knew well enough, and she navigated, sought out to educate herself on how to use this. I can't speak for her. I won't pretend to, but she joined, I think it was mstdn.ca actually, and started, and literally overnight, she talks about this on her podcast, which is at, I think it's Unbound. No, that's, I got to get this right. I must get this correct. I will link to it because Pamela Wallen is another senator that has a podcast. So I'm getting things a little
nice.
confused in my head. One moment. Jeez, Paula Simons. Oh, sorry. No Nonsense is the podcast from from Pamela Wallen, and Unbound. Yes, that's it. Unbound is the podcast from Senator Paula Simons, and she's politics, Paulatics, a bit of a
Yep.
pun there. I'll link
Yep.
to all of these things in the show notes. Pamela Wallen is not on Mastodon yet. Paula Simons is.
We'll get her there.
We'll get her there. Yeah. But it just like say it's that education. It's that hurdle we have to get over. And then once we're there, then hopefully more in government will be using their own Mastodon or at least Fediverse, a server of some kind to communicate, perhaps in the same way they've been using Twitter.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the greatest potential for this petition, if it manages to at least start a little bit of a conversation, I think the best we can hope is that there's already people in those basements of government like us who are already thinking along this line, right? And they're thinking,
Well,
God,
yeah, the concept of it, the premise of it, yeah.
yeah. So if we can be the little flag up that says, hey, those citizens out there, they say that we should
Yeah.
maybe do this. Maybe I should take it to my manager of IT or whatever and be like, maybe we can try this out. And it'll probably start out as a little test server on some
Absolutely.
Canada.ca domain, and they'll just try it out, and then it'll all burn down once. And as things happen in government.
You gotta, there's a bit of figuring things out, as it were. There's something I would love you to do right now. I was looking over my monitor because I was desperately trying to find, I should have had it ready, but you put out a post on Mastodon that I commented, just every, loved the wording of it, loved it. And it was along the lines of what you're saying right now. I'm curious if you can read that for us.
Let me find it.
I
I was talking to, it was in reply actually to the senator.
What was it, reply? Okay. That's why I couldn't find it
yeah.
in the main feed, I think. Let me look at my bookmarks, see if I can find it there. I don't want to read it for you, but
If I can find it.
yeah.
There it is. Yeah, I've just found it there.
Go for it.
Yeah, no.
I'm serious. It's extremely well worded.
It's because I believe it, right?
That's right.
As things happen. No, if I was to read it, so I'll just.
Please.
I said and to give a little context, the senator, she said that she's a little cynical about petitions. Like I was saying, they're not always successful.
No, they're not.
And that's just the way. In fact, usually they're not successful as far as the direct change. And she made the point that maybe we'll be able to get some more parliamentarians onto Mastodon. And what I said was, I hope it inspires more parliamentarians to make that kind of leap. But I hope it inspires that larger discussion about Parliament as an independent entity, creating its own verified, trusted social media space that's not controlled by outside forces. Like I said in there, it says like email, like the Art Commons website, and all the other services they provide. Canadians should be able to always know that their parliamentarians are using reputable, secure, and law-abiding services under no one's control but Parliament's itself. We should really never have allowed ourselves to become so beholden to commercial platforms for basic communication, but we didn't have those options before, and now we do. It'd be irregular, right? Highly irregular for a parliamentarian to use a Gmail address as their official email address, right? It wouldn't make any sense. So hopefully, and how I ended the post was, hopefully this is the starting point of realizing the same thing for social media. The only truly trusted address for a parliamentarian on social media should end with parl.gc.ca. And I believe that. we shouldn't be beholden to corporate entities for our communication. And it's, in a way, it's ironic to say that when people have been publishing letters to newspapers and all of that sort of thing for as long as there's been democracy. Media has a role to play in communicating, but not in that personal communication between a representative and their constituent. And that's the difference, I think, between being okay with a corporate TV entity or newspaper entity or one of these sort of journalistic entities hosting the communications or publishing that communication. But when you're talking about the person to person communication, that's where it really should always be something that's either controlled by the parliamentarian or controlled by Parliament, so that all Canadians, all people who are engaging, and it doesn't just apply to Canada, it applies to anyone in the world. Anybody communicating to their government should be able to trust that they're actually communicating with their government, and it's going to come out in a way that they understand, and in a way that's equitable, and is able to reach them no matter where they are. One of the things I think that is overlooked and will become more obvious as decentralized social media comes to the fore is that it opens up access to all of the people that are on that decentralized network far more easily than ever has been possible in the corporate media space. There's always been barriers, there's always been walls that the corporations put up because they want you to sign up. They want to harvest that data in order to be able to make a profit from it. And that shouldn't be the first barrier. Sure, if at some point when the decentralized web, there'll probably be servers that will want to make some sort of profit motive out of it, and that's fine. Whatever. It's not verboten or anything. It's just that for people who are just trying to communicate one to another, to be able to always trust that you could always see it. It's always on that web page, ms mstdn.ca or parl.gc.ca. It'll always be open. It doesn't matter how
Yeah,
people get to the internet, as long as they can get there, they'll be able to see it.
I think to just quickly to what you just said there, since the new ownership of Twitter, you must be you must be signed in, you must be an active
Yeah.
user of Twitter, or even I think to a very large extent Facebook, but certainly Twitter, in order to view whatever is being posted by whoever is posting it. So with Mastodon and Twitter as it once was, publicly accessible, which is what politicians should, that's what how their content should be. You want to see what they said, you can look it up, and you don't have a barrier in front of you to do it.
And I actually think, I don't know if there's any laws around this. Maybe it's a fun question to ask Senator Simons.
Sure.
But I'm surprised that maybe not politicians,
Sure.
because they're individuals, they can do whatever they like. But government agencies,
Oh yeah.
for them to be behind the Facebook or the Twitter wall
Yeah.
and only accessible to people who are on those platforms is completely against their mandates.
Yeah.
They have a clear mandate to get out to the Canadian public. And if those websites aren't public, then that's not their mandate, and they shouldn't be on those services. They need to find a different place, even if that means cutting those off and only posting on their websites.
Correct.
Right? Then I think that's something that we're just conveniently overlooking as far as the people in those government organizations who they'll be like, we're just so used to doing this.
That's right.
Can we just keep doing it? But they're not fulfilling their mandate. Like, it's completely out the window. You can't go to, like, right now, I can't go to my local emergency notification website because they all post on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
I can't go there. It's not available.
That's true.
So what happens if there's an emergency? Is that going to be that's supposed to be their main method of communication? It's not going to get out to people.
No, absolutely right. Oh my goodness, that's a really good example. Let me say this: this isn't. I'm not a fan of talking politics. I'll say that, but in terms of this conversation and technology and Mastodon and so forth, it's a really important conversation to have. I don't want to take you over the overall chat here, but I'm loving this. I think it was last summer. I think it was. it's been a heck of a couple of years, I'm telling you. I think it was last summer. We had a tornado-warned storm going over us, and I was on Mastodon at that point. I don't think Threads didn't come out till later, but Mum and I were literally in our basement in the concrete foundation surrounded basement in the furnace room there, our tornado shelter basically. And her bedroom is in that area as well, but we were hunkered down, and I was glued to my phone, and the only place to really get the most current, like almost to the second, but the last a few minutes certainly of what's going on, was through Twitter. And I had to be signed in. That service had to be accessible to me in that moment. There was that's where people were posting. I wish they weren't, but that's where they were posting. Storm chasers, meteorologists, regular people on the ground. Oh my goodness, that's a scary looking cloud. What the hell are you doing outside? But thank you for taking the photo. People who used these platforms, not just out of convenience, but out of need in these situations of newsworthy events, of potentially life or death events, and to have that behind not a paywall, but a wall. We have you have to sign up for it, and that service has to be available in that moment, and you're depending on it. That was racing through my head the entire time because I needed to know what was happening with this storm. And if you look up, oh my God, that's a freaking looking scary cloud. And as a matter of fact, that particular storm went around the part of it that was producing or potentially producing a tornado. It went around in between Red Deer and Sylvan Lake, and then went a little further south. And in fact, a tornado did briefly touch down in a field somewhere.
Right.
So it was very real. And I couldn't help but think that, my goodness, people, it's not that hard to get onto Mastodon, this free service, donations, but free service, and to be posting to it without having these barriers in place where you can trust it, it's there, and to rely on a single service that is controlled by some company in the States that could do whatever the hell they want. They could shut it down tomorrow if they wanted to. They control the kind of content that's on their platform. That was scary. And that's why I can't force anybody to do anything, neither can you. But I would hope that the government would run, to be fair, we're talking about Parliament and how politicians specifically would use a social media platform. But in a general sense of having many more people on a public framework like the Fediverse, like Mastodon, even if they're also on Twitter, then to local organizations or just anybody and everybody of what brought Twitter to a critical mass. We need to not be relying on this single platform controlled by a maniac for that type of for general information, but especially that type of information where it's critical knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's life and death a lot of time. You notice, well, you had in your questions, you had a question in there about when I was city councilor.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
In
Thank
Port
you.
Alberni.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And this is a good point because so I was a city councilor in Port Alberni between 2014 and 2018.
Okay.
And it was great, but to this point, if you know anything about Port Alberni, I'm not sure if you do, but we had a tsunami in 1965. And it was generated by a large earthquake, 9 something earthquake in Alaska. On Good Friday, 1965, and the middle of the night, it came up the inlet, and amazingly didn't kill anybody, hurt a few people, but very minor considering the damage it did. So while I was on city council, we actually had a tsunami warning, a fairly serious one was it 2000? And I want to say it was January.
I think it was 18.
Something. Was it 18? Maybe
I was there.
18.
Not in Port Alberni, really? But I was on the island.
Yeah, it must have been 18 then.
Yeah, it was 18. Yep.
Yeah, it was quite an experience, both from just being a resident and living through that moment, but also being a counselor and having some responsibility around making decisions when you're in an emergency situation. Thankfully, I didn't have to make any decisions because it all ended up being a false alarm, so that was great. But But now, when I think back on it, if we were in this space that we're in now with social media,
Yeah.
when that happened, Facebook blew up
Yes.
and Twitter blew up, and that's where all of the information was
Correct.
going to. And in fact, the city at the time hardly could get its act together as far as communicating out. And the best place you could find information from the city was on Facebook, on the Facebook page. And so today, because things have become so much more walled down, and that includes not having any news articles on Facebook anymore, which is a huge problem. Although ironically,
Yeah.
I think it's gonna help the news industry and hurt Facebook eventually. Who knows? But just thinking of all that now, if we were in that same position with a tsunami warning, honestly, I wouldn't tell people to go to Facebook or Twitter. I'd tell them to turn on the radio. I think
Yeah.
that's the most reliable source.
And in fact, I
We
did.
actually didn't.
In
Yeah.
fact, we did.
Right.
And Mum is of that generation, to put it that way. But even the tornado storm, Warren storm that we had here, Mum and I were in Courtney for a few weeks house sitting during that January that you mentioned in 28. And that, if memory serves, that happened at night.
Yeah, middle of the night, 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Yeah. Yes. Mom turned on the TV and the radio for as long as we had power, and thankfully it stayed on, which is another concern. But you turn on the TV, they're not saying much of anything, truth be told. The radio stations that were available, it was the middle of the night. They had a recording on. Nobody was saying nothing. Here, it was the regular news hit at the top of the hour. And then they were back to commercials and local events. Absolutely disgraceful when it comes to an emergency happening at this very moment. Turn the recording off and say something. But yeah, that's where I resorted. I was relaying the info to her in both occasions because of the social media I had in front of me.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody
yeah.
who,
And if
yeah, good.
just that if we had a reliable social media space
Yeah,
that we knew would be able to work in those kind of times, then it was
yeah,
then, and it can be a reliable place for information to come out and
right.
for the emergency kind of information to be out there.
Yeah, so I don't know what it'll take to gain the mass appeal that apparently Twitter did to have all these organizations and government people communicating using these tools, these platforms to get information out. But I hope that the direction that we're headed, including with parliamentarians, politicians in general, who who need to communicate certain things, and you go where the people are. You just do. You can
Yeah,
post it on the website, but you want to have really get it out there in any possible place that people are going to see it. But for the social media side of things, where things are moving in that direction, albeit slowly, to where it is that kind of that public space, as we keep talking about, that isn't controlled by any one corporate giant, and we can trust it to be reliable, not just for emergency situations, but to communicate with our politicians. Now, to be fair, it's worth saying here, when it comes to politicians and how they communicate with their constituents, they have zero obligation to use social media to do it.
oh, absolutely.
There
Yeah,
is no
yeah,
law mandating that.
yeah,
They can ignore their mentions if they want to.
yeah.
They can, there's no punishment or
Nor
consequence,
should there be. Yeah,
nor should there. They are required to respond to email and communicate that way. They are required, or at least their staff is required to answer the phone, things like
yeah.
this. So we haven't gotten to the point where social media is in that same boat, as it were, where they were obligated to pay attention to it. But for the things that they do want to communicate about, or messages that they do want to send out there, Twitter and Facebook are just no longer the proper place to do it. There are better ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, pardon me. Really glad that you brought up the fact that you were city councilor, former city councilor for Port Alberta. What brought you to be in that position? How did you get there?
It really comes back to what I said before about helping people.
Okay.
Because as a technology person,
Hmm.
I like to help or I like to solve problems,
Okay.
right? So I always thought of being a counselor as just solving people's problems or solving little bits of problems, even if it's even if nothing huge, but it's I found it extremely gratifying
Okay.
as a job to be able to say that people would email you or call you or accost you in the grocery store and be like, "Hey," right?
Okay.
But it,
Don't accost Chris, please.
but it's all good, right? And I really liked it.
I'm glad it was
I
all
think
good,
it
because
was,
there can be times for people when it's not, but I'm glad it was all good for you.
yeah, and yeah. To be honest, it wasn't always all good. Social
Thank you.
media had a lot to do that. But no,
True.
I really liked it because it was about helping people and making a difference in my community, which I was born and raised in.
Yes.
And as I said, it's in kind of a turning point. So yeah, so I thought it would be something worthwhile to take on, and it was.
I gather that was a part-time, I want to say gig, but that was a part-time position for you as you were still
Yeah,
working full-time
yeah,
at the
yeah.
university?
I'm very lucky, and I think we should think about this more when we're thinking about especially local politics, but also provincial and federal positions.
Hmm.
We need to make it more accessible to people who are working, which happens to be the vast majority of people
Yeah.
in Canada. You should be able to consider serving your community as an elected representative. A lot of people just can't, and it's not because they don't want to or they don't have the ability or whatever. It's they just can't. They don't have the time. They don't
Well,
have
no,
the.
no,
It
they
just
don't. There's
doesn't
no
work.
flexibility there. I won't get into this, but we're already going on quite a bit, we're having fun. I know we are. I volunteered for a political candidate that was running, and that was last year. Yeah. So I helped her with some things, and yeah, it's a tough thing that just to run. Never mind, it's I actually discussed this with her, and I'll just say the point. I don't want to get into the whole role and everything involved in a political campaign, but she often expressed to me, and I'm not paraphrasing, but I'm just going to say from my own perspective, the barriers that are in place that make it harder as to run against an incumbent, because the incumbent's got all day. That's what
Yeah,
that is their job. It's their full-time gig. They don't have to worry about anything else. I guess the family and different life obligations, but they're not having to juggle a full-time job along with it. They're not racing after work to go knock on doors every single day, and these different challenges.
yeah,
And in my personal view, for whatever it happens to be worth, I strongly think that to make our democracy healthier, we need to when people are running when people, for office, then even if they're not, like, how do I word that? They should be paid. That should be there should be money funding in place to allow them to dedicate their regular
yeah.
time that
Almost. Yeah,
so that they can dedicate the time and the energy to run, dare I call it, a proper campaign.
yeah,
And when they're running off their feet doing 18-hour days, for her, geez, it was a good year, to be honest, between announcing that she was going to do this thing and then the whole buildup of the campaign up until election day. It's a lot,
yeah.
and
No, for sure.
she lost, unfortunately, and was devastated by that. Lovely lady, but it's hard, and it makes a person question: should I do this again? Should I recommend this process to others? And like I say, there's just these barriers in place that I'm glad that you were able to find the time to run for office and to be in office for those 4 years, 2014 to 2018, as you said, and still managed to juggle the full-time job with it.
And really the only reason I was able to is because and I'll just say it right out there. I'm a union guy, and it was because of my union,
Okay.
because that provided the flexibility in my workplace to be able to say, yeah, I need to go to a city meeting for the next couple hours on Thursday evening or whatever. And like I said, because I have that secure position, I was able to make those kinds of choices, and my employer was totally fine with it. In fact, very supportive of it, and it was good. And not everybody has that
No.
ability, and especially when you're talking about a local elected official, if it's a city councilor or a regional district, at least that's what we have in BC, smaller regions elected officials, you don't make a living wage out of that. My salary, I think, was $18,000 a year for councilor. That's fine. That's great. But not something someone can live on. You can't quit
No.
your job and become a city councilor. So you have to have a job. And that necessarily means that if we have we want to have like you said, a strong
Mhm.
democratic country. We have to make it available for people to be able to run in those positions. I feel really strongly about that
As do I.
because
I was
it's
devastated myself when, I mean, not the fact that she lost. She busted her ass in every possible regard. That our team was fantastic. It was a hard thing to lose, but that's the process. You're either going to
yeah,
win or you're going to lose. And I will be forever proud of my participation in that campaign, as I will be forever proud of everybody who decides to run for office. And goodness knows you had a team behind you during that as well. It's hard, and unlike I can't keep going on politics, but like say for cities like Edmonton or Calgary or what have you, where that is a full-time gig and they do get paid well. But for the smaller
yeah,
regional communities, to your point, where they're not making a lot, they're there because they feel like they need to be there. Like you want to
yeah,
help people and you want to do the right, you want to be a part of this. So I just wish that I didn't even know that before I started to become before I was volunteering for that campaign, of those barriers that are in place, and that's a problem. And I look forward to the day where more resources are in place and more, say, flexibility, but the ability to go on leave and to run a, again, quote unquote, proper campaign where somebody's not exhausted, zonking out by the end of the day because they just have, there's just so much going on top of the regular life.
yeah.
It's a lot to handle. And my final, just very quick thought on that. The entire time she was doing all this, I was helping her from home for the most part. And for anybody who works for a living or is running for office or any of these things, you have to have the health to be able to do it. I could not run for office because I now know what it takes. You have to be a healthy person, basically. You got to be able to pull off those 16-hour days. So that's a real disservice to a lot of great people out there who want to run for office, and for these different reasons that shouldn't even be in place. Shouldn't That's why they can't. So never mind going against an incumbent, that's even harder. But
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's 4 years. That's a Did you decide to leave the position, or did you not?
Oh no, I was voted out.
Oh, okay.
I lost fair and square.
Did you? All right.
That's okay. That's okay. No, it's
That's a,
yeah, and it's funny. It's if you ever talk to a politician and they don't say that ego can get in the way of
yeah,
your
yeah,
own prospects,
yeah.
they're lying. There's always ego in there, so you have to beware. But no, it's all good. I look back on it very fondly, and even torture my wife with the thought of doing it again. But I probably won't. But yeah,
No,
no, it's
I meant
good.
don't torture
It's
your
good.
wife with that.
Yeah, no, I won't torture my wife. No.
I'm sure they get. Having met you in literally in person now for the first time, or in person speak for the first time. Just your character, your personality. I can just tell you are a fantastic counselor. And like I said, the other guy or gal obviously won fair and square, so you weren't reelected. But I'm sure the time you were there, people were. A lot of people, I'm sure, were quite happy with what you were able to do.
Oh, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with to kind of wind things down here. I have a couple of questions left related to, what do you know, technology. Tell me briefly, if you can. Don't try to cram everything, but tell me about your Alberta weather projects.
Yeah. No, I've run albernyweather.ca, a website for local weather basically since 2005. You live on the West Coast, I think everywhere. It's a Canada thing. Everybody loves to talk about the weather. I was always fascinated with the weather when I
Same.
was growing up. Yeah, when we moved back here, I had a little extra money and
Hmm.
bought a weather station. And being a geek, I connected it to the internet and have had a website with it ever since. So
what
yeah, no, I have a blog there and webcams and time lapses and now a
you
live
do?
webcam and yeah, no, it's lots of fun.
Yeah, I only recently discovered the webcams. I'm ashamed to say, but I guess the newest one is, or at least I'm not sure if it's still there, but it was, I think, staring at
But
the snowman. Yep. Uh, and then there's the one on the roof, which I don't think is the greatest angle, but I think it's great that you have it there. And what kind of weather station?
it's a Davis Pro.
Good
Yeah,
one.
yeah, they've been really good. I think I replaced the rain sensor a couple times in
Yeah.
15 years. But what else have I replaced? Maybe I think I replaced it. Oh yeah, I replaced the temperature sensor once. But no, it's been rock solid.
I have a Accu on the roof here.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. And I use open source software called WEEWX.
Yes, I used it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I used to have reddeerweather.ca, before that comoxweather.ca, before that leducweather.ca. So I've basically been doing the exact same thing. And that was the extent of my programming experience. But each one of them were accurate, and I just don't find them like this one's been going good for a while now. It doesn't seem to want to count rain accumulation, but everything else, wind, temperature.
Rain is hard. Those rain gauges they're finicky if they're not perfectly level. Like I think a station right now, actually, I think the rain gauge isn't level, so it's not counting properly.
I worked really hard to level it. Yeah. It's just not counting it, so I can't tell how much rain we're getting. But yeah, Dave, I'll get I'll send you a message. You can tell me what the kind you have and when I can afford to do. I have a little extra money. I'll get the same kind because it seems to work well for you. I don't want to get another Accurate. They've broken down on me a few more than I'd like over the years.
And it's got the one I added UV sensor on it and a solar sensor, and which being in Port Alberni, we get super hot in the summertime, so it's been really good. Yeah.
Yes. All right, that's great. I'll check. I'll also link to your site, and I think you even have a Mastodon account for it too, right?
For sure. Yeah. Because I used to be on Facebook. That was actually because I stopped using Facebook in 2019 personally. Okay. But I couldn't give up the Alberni Weather Facebook page because I just had so many people on there. It was hard to give it up. There was probably 3,000-4,000 people that would be on that page. So I finally deactivated it in 2021. And that was the last time I used Facebook. And then, when Mastodon came around and Twitter blew up, I just decided I'll just move everything over to Mastodon all at the same time. I was having feet in both doors. So
unfortunately, you gave up that kind of Facebook community to do it. But
I did, and I gave up a Twitter community because there was connections there with politicians, with Environment Canada. Back and forth, I would often be with them. So there's definitely been a loss as far as Alberni Weather only being on Mastodon. You got to.
Well, you've got the, like I said,
and I still have the blog.
I was going to say, you have the website, you have the blog, it is publicly accessible, no sign up required, and you don't have to be part of a social media network to see that, so that people can always go there. And I enjoy doing that. I had to give that up for some other projects I've had going on, but I'm absolutely fascinated by weather, always have been. And not just.
I just love that there's always something more you can measure, right? There's another temperature sensor, there's UV, or there's whatever, right? I just love to be able to grab all of that stuff.
The part everything about weather fascinates me. I can never get my head around the math or the science, but everything about weather itself fascinates me. And the thing that really people often forget is, particularly like for a community like Red Deer, it's not small, but it's, I think 100,000 people. But it's not Edmonton size or Calgary size. It's certainly not Vancouver size. So you look up you look it up on Weather Network, and it's just, I think, the one station south of us at our little airport that we have, whereas weather can be incredibly isolated. You walk a couple of blocks and it's no longer raining or snowing or whatever the case is. And then thankfully there are a number of weather stations up on Weather Underground in Red Deer and elsewhere. And that's the more true representation of what's the kind of right next door or at least in your neighborhood versus the 15 to 20-minute drive to get downtown kind of thing. What do you hate about technology and why? What do you love about technology and why? And if you happen to have a simple technology question, I might be able to answer. If not, then we'll just round things out. Be right back.
Awesome. Sounds good. Cool.
I was trying to keep this to an hour. A fool's errand.
We'll get it in there. It's all good.
We decided to talk about everything. We decided to talk about everything. I'm going to get up and do something. Go ahead. Chris, what do you love? What do you hate about your technology and why?
That was hard. I just really like technology. I don't know.
Oh, I think
when you sent me.
Oh, sorry. I think I lost your audio for a second. You have to repeat that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I wonder if let me just check my AirPods. They're gonna die on me. Oh yeah. Here, hold on. Let me switch here for a second.
Yep.
They're gonna die.
There you go.
There we go.
All right. Backups, always a good thing.
Hopefully you don't sound too different, but should be okay.
We can hear you. It's actually a little bit clear audio. I like it.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, what do I hate about technology? I can't say that I hate anything about technology in particular, but boy, there's lots to hate about technology companies. Just the way, especially recently, I don't know if you follow Cory Doctorow.
I do.
Great guy. I love his enshittification, if I can say that on this.
Yeah. I love that
podcast.
you follow this stuff. I just love that you follow this stuff too. I'll just quickly jump in for 2 seconds. I think it was last weekend, the episode of This Week in Tech. He was a guest on that.
Oh, really?
He comes on every so often to that particular podcast, but they of course talked about enshittification. Sorry for swearing. Enshittification. Enshittification is the word that they swapped that out with. We won't get into what that means at the moment, but he touched on a lot of different things in terms of kind of the state of technology and technology companies, right along the lines of I'm sure where you're going.
Yeah, no, it's become really clear over the past 10 years, I think, that companies have gone from Google, do no evil, to being abjectly evil at times. And all the concerns around privacy, access to your own data, and just, God, go do a Google search and try to find something. It's awful. As someone in a classroom at VIU, we used to tell people to Google things because that's a skill. It used to be a skill. I don't even know if it can be called a skill anymore because it's so hard to get the information that you want without the sort of
half the page
list.
Being ads for one
it's
thing.
It's just ads and then it's just boosted content. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. I'll tell you what the skill is. Just for a second, I'll tell you what the skill is because I do it. You can't just use plain Jane Google.
Yeah.
I use Start Page myself. Yep. There's also DuckGo. Either of those are better. I also use, not on every web page I go to because ads matter and ads support servers and the rest of it, but some certain ad blockers. Ghostery is actually not an ad blocker, but it's a great plugin. So it's Privacy Badger, uBlock Origin. There's a few of them, and Ghostery in particular. And I actually have a blog post about this. There's an option for block search ads. I don't care if an ad's on a page I want to go to. That's fine. Pay your bills, but get the heck out of my search results.
Yeah, totally.
Go on.
Totally. It's if there's one thing I hate about it, that's where we are today. Where we are today.
Yeah. Fair point. Thank you for keeping that concise.
No, it's on the other end of the spectrum. What I love at technology, I love that it still opens doors to people. Again, as someone in a classroom, even though people can have all sorts of skill levels, they may not know one particular technology, they may not know anything at all about technology, and just the number of doors that can open for people when they learn a skill, whether if it's something like video editing or making a web page or something like that. That's what I love to see, is people being really empowered by technology. And I think that's still something that can happen. And I think there's a real danger that, what's the word, that sort of Luddite, right? There's people out there who are just so anti-technology, and they think we should just go back to whatever it was before.
I have my days, Chris. I'm not going to lie to you.
I can sometimes I want to throw something out the window, but I think the benefits still far outweigh the sort of what we see around us happening with the decline of corporations and that kind of thing. But I love that technology can open doors for people and will always do that in some way. And computers in general, while we can complain about Windows 11 or whatever the operating system is of the day, but really computers continue to get better at helping people and get better at making it easier for people to use those computers and use technology. And I still see that as a hill that's rising rather than something that might be getting worse.
I have many thoughts on that, but I'll save it for a blog post. Genuinely, I do.
Open the can of worms.
They're not here. Okay, what do you hate? What do you love? Do you happen to have put me on the spot because you didn't send me anything, a relatively simple technology question I might be able to answer for you?
I don't know. I was thinking about this. I'm not sure.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I'm not sure. How do I make a Ethernet cable that won't just fall out of its stupid port every single time I pull on it? Anyway, no.
Really?
Oh God. Sometimes like a lot of I've made a million cables, and most of the time they work just fine. And sometimes, God, you just can't get them to stay in, and you just
What I
gotta
want
redo it.
is an Ethernet cable or any cable that won't tangle.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. Please.
Yeah. If they fall out of the port, then that
Yeah.
that at least in my experience, that means they haven't got that little clicky thing at
Right.
the top.
But when they do, it's still there. No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Less cables for me to trip over, please.
Yeah. No, totally. I can't even wrap up my extension cables without them being a rat's nest by the end of it. There's some things people are good at, some
Well,
people.
there's like this cable, which is braided, but the Ethernet cables, there's other kinds of cables that I love the fact that they are braided. They are more durable. If you trip over them, it's your own fault. But at least in the course of regular use, wear and tear over a period of time, they're not going to break down on you as fast.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. Yeah, and you know all about that because you put together these things and use them quite a bit. I will say probably, in hindsight, probably the better question would have been, what's your favorite technology device? But I'll tell you mine first, in case you need a second. I absolutely have loved my Aftershock. Actually, I don't have it with me. Usually right there. My Aftershocks Bluetooth headphones. They sit on the outside of your ear, not inside, not over your ear, on the kind of where your temples are. They claim to be bone conducting, but more to the point, they don't irritate your ears at all. The battery lasts a couple of two-hour podcasts, if not longer. It's Bluetooth, so there are no wires. You plug it in like everything else overnight, and it's good to go for another day. And I've had that thing for 5 years at least.
Yeah.
Compared to who knows how many headsets since the dawn of headsets and earphones and earbuds that have broken down, or I've tripped over the cord, or who knows what else. These things are just fantastic, and I love going for walks, bike rides, going for a drive, long drives particularly. And when Mom was house sitting up in near Millet for a couple of months, that's a good hour and a half. That was great. Listen to a podcast, and that's my favorite piece of technology, I have to say. Do you have anything that you just love?
Absolutely. And this isn't a cop out because it's gonna the same as yours, but I have a pair of headphones that I bought during the pandemic through work. I needed a pair of headphones that I could do video editing with, but I wanted them still to be wireless because I was on Zoom constantly. I just didn't want to be tethered to my computer constantly. So I got a pair of those Arctic, what are they called? Arctis Pro. Yeah, Arctis Pro Steel Series. Man, they are fantastic. They're so clear. They have such good sound, and I can use them video editing. There's no lag because every Bluetooth based one that I've ever come across, there's always some sort of lag when you're trying to do video editing. And these ones they have a little box that's connected to the computer. So I think it's RF or something instead of Bluetooth. But man, they're fantastic. They're really great.
You'll have to send me a link to that. I can include in the show notes for people.
Yeah. No, they're really good. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, love it.
And I don't work for them or anything.
No. Honestly, that's the best kind of marketing they can get.
Yeah, no, they're really good. And I've had them since 2020, so 3 years. They've been great. Yeah.
Boys, I love this Shure mic. I'm just gonna say it. Not the first mic boom arm I've had. I have a Gator over there, but this one's fantastic. Elgato, that's what it is.
Oh yeah, they make good stuff. Yeah,
this is one of the best podcasting mics. I keep tapping it. One of the best podcasting mics that you can get. There's the MV7. There's SB something or other. That's fancier.
Yeah,
that's more expensive, and I didn't see the need for it. Yeah, so I could point all kinds of things, but that's great that for something that you're using on a regular basis. I will say that for not my current keyboard, but I've used Bluetooth keyboards and mice in the past, and that's not for video editing, but I do find those have a little bit of delay at times, and I got so sick and tired of it, so I refuse to use any Bluetooth keyboards or mice anymore.
Yeah. I use I don't really like the Apple, the keyboards that they come with, the Bluetooth keyboards they come with. They're so tiny. I do like their mice, these things.
Yeah, the Magic Mice, yeah.
But who ever thought it was a good idea to put the charging port on the bottom? Like it's right there. It's so dumb.
It is.
It's just the dumbest thing. I don't understand what they do.
I don't like.
It's a great mouse.
I have a Windows or Microsoft keyboard in front of me just because that's what it is. And I have a Mac Mini in front of me. I switch to it all the time. I'm using the exact same keyboard and mice for it. The monitor, same. I don't need a special Mac keyboard.
Yeah.
A mouse that, never mind being Bluetooth, has that charging port would infuriate me on yours.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's the stupidest thing I think they've ever done. But yeah.
Yeah, and for a company that prides itself on user experience, that's really surprising to me. Actually.
Yeah, and it's been like that for years. So I don't know.
At least they got rid of the butterfly keyboard and the touch bar.
Yes. Oh, I love the touch bar. Oh, we'll have to have an argument about that one day.
Okay, we will.
Oh, okay. I love the touch bar. I miss it. Oh, I love that thing. It was so great. When I lost it.
We can. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. But the butterfly keyboard thing, I never had one, but so many people have talked about it. Articles I've read.
Yeah.
That was a very poor design decision.
Yeah. Totally.
My goodness, we're having very too much fun. So I want to finish off the conversation, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get this thing done. I just wanted to reiterate the petition that you've created for, obviously, for not for Mastodon, but about Mastodon, particularly having a Canadian Parliament focused and controlled Mastodon instance or server, or something that is based on that framework of technologies where they have again that control over it. I'll link to it in the show notes. Awesome. Is there anything else that you can think of to summarize it in terms of what you might want to say to encourage people to get on board with that?
Yeah, I would just say that even if you're using Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of those social media technologies, I think it's really in everybody's interest to encourage Parliament to do this, because it gives the control back to Parliament, which essentially means us.
Yes.
In the grander scheme of things, and that's really how people should be communicating with their parliamentarians, is through.
And honestly, I think it sets a standard. I think it's a precedent.
For sure. And it could be something, actually, I forgot about this until just now, but an MP from Ireland replied to me last week, and he was super interested in this petition because he wanted to potentially have the same kind of thing in Ireland. It is, I think we're at a point with open social web and Mastodon and the Fediverse and all of it that it matters to make those connections and to really inspire people, because that's what'll make it take off. So I hope people can go and find it and sign it. They have until mid-April to do it, so lots of time. And please share it with all your friends.
On Facebook for sure. I think Twitter blocks the word Mastodon.
Yes, they do. Just say open social web; it'll confuse them.
Or put the asterisks, or do whatever kind of trickery that one needs to do, which is what I did actually on the Twitter. Kind of, if you happen to be there, for whether it gets lost in the void that is Twitter or not, that's another thing. That they control the kind of content that is on their platform, and we do not want that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that deeply bothers me, but I digress. Where absolutely, I'll link in the show notes to the petition, and please, everybody, take 5 minutes out of your life, if that, and go sign this thing. No credit card required. None of these things.
Super easy.
You don't even need to create an account to do it.
Nope.
You go there, put your name in, email address, I think phone number, but just so they can verify you are indeed a Canadian citizen, or at least resident.
Yep.
And then click on submit or whatever that button is. You'll get a verification email. Click that to confirm, and you have officially signed it.
Yep. Super easy.
Yes.
Yep.
So I'm obviously very behind this. People, even the boosts, or not the boosts as they're called, but even the custom posts that I created, I anything to help get even more traction on this, and for it to be already getting, in the first few days, international attention. That's pretty
really
incredible. Good. And to think all it took was a chance meeting Gord Johns at the grocery store or something.
Exactly. It's all good. You never know. You should always be involved in politics. It's good times, but you never know what you can do. So.
Yeah. And the final quick thing, if I can say this, in terms of generically speaking, for the teaching that you and others do about technology, for the teaching that even we try to do about politics and different things, to educate people, to meet people where they are. For one thing, we're all many of us, all of us, I want to say, in this world are intelligent in our own right. Some of us can fix cars, some of us can fix computers, some of us are doctors, etc. Some of us are teachers. No one is stupid by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm thinking of my mom when I say this. Fiercely intelligent, but she can't seem to, and no disrespect, she knows this, technology, it just doesn't click with her. So for her, someone like her, or for more, I want to say, normal people of certain generations, even you and I, to our generation, for politicians, for these different folks who have trouble wrapping their minds around this kind of stuff, where I went to Twitter, I signed up, I used it. I want to reiterate, there was a learning curve to do that. Twitter it's been around since 2006, I think. We got used to it, we got familiar with it, became second nature. And I know it's hard to move away from that. But even if you start slow, sign up, go to mstdn.ca, go to the Canadian.social, go to any one of them. Mastodon.social is the big one, but there are smaller communities, smaller servers, if you will, that have less users, that might be a little less overwhelming. And play with it. Because just like how you teach your children, I'm sure you teach your children this too, but teach your students this kind of thing too, where it matters in terms of how we're trying to educate people and inform them and get them on board with things. It's not an overnight thing. It's a slow progression. You got to dabble your toes in and progress from there until you're comfortable with it, just like we did with email.
I think it's, and anyone who's coming from Twitter, especially, the barrier there is not great. Once people, like you said, as long as they give it a chance and just have that moment of discovery, then I think
and the best, I'll just say this, you're not necessarily walking in blind either. It's not going to be I'll say, like when you first joined Twitter, like day one, there was nothing in your feed. You are relying on the algorithm. To be fair, there is no algorithm with Mastodon, but there is a local timeline, and there's even a federated timeline if you dare to keep up with. That's everything in the Fediverse, but at least the local timeline, particularly on a smaller instance or server, is going to be much more. You're going to be able to gently scroll through that, see who's on there, click them, see what they're saying, follow them. That same process, and build up a collection of who you're following, and go from there and see who they follow, see what they're sharing, et cetera, as with all social media. It doesn't matter which server you choose, they pretty much all work the same. Some have slightly different rules than others, but I'd say whether it's yourself who is joining, or you're trying to convince somebody else to join, or to do anything technology related, like we all have to convince people once in a while to do a number of things. It's about how you, I want to say, massage the message, right? It's about how you communicate it and encourage people to use it, check it out, et cetera, et cetera. But the concept, the premise of what this is, particularly for parliamentarians, where again, you have that control, you have that at the whims of these big companies. So it's really important that parliamentarians, but pretty much anybody, can join these communities, these servers, these instances, and really get to know it, because the technology, the premise behind it, that's what it wasn't available in 2006. I don't think it was. No. But it's available now, and going forward, it's a better solution. It's a better way to communicate and to get away from the toxicity that social media has become, as these large companies, where their priority solely is profit.
And this is a whole nother can of worms.
Yes,
I
sorry.
don't want to get into it, but they profit from that toxicity. That is a prime source. They want you to be angry. They want that toxicity because they know that's what drives the content and engagement and their profit.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was listening to, I gotta stop it. I was listening to a podcast of all things. It wasn't Cory Doctorow. I wish it was. Who was it? I'll have to put in a blog post. I need to stop myself. Okay. These 2 hours here, I think we're both starting to fade here a little bit. We're having way too much fun. Thank you, Chris, for making the time today. 2 hours of your time. I hope you didn't have anything planned.
It's all good. It's raining outside. No worries.
Yeah, Vancouver Island, a little bit more relaxed. I like it. I like it.
It's all good.
It's been a pleasure to connect with you and to continue to connect with you and communicate and talk with you on Mastodon. Thank you for being a part of that community, even though it's not the particular server I'm a member of, it doesn't matter. And you're really putting the effort into these things. You're taking time out of your day, you're prioritizing it. It matters to you. These are passions of yours, whether you're teaching or putting this petition together, and it matters. So I want to thank you for all of it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great chat.
Yes.
And
it's been wonderful to get to know you in this.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So I really appreciate it. And it's social media, for all of its toxicity, is still a great place, I think, to meet people and do interesting things like petitions and all sorts of other fun things. Sharing cat pictures, which I do often. It's all good.
Yeah, and again, it's the quality of your posts, the thought. You're very thoughtful, not just in terms of the petition. I don't think I knew you on Twitter, but certainly I have for the amount of time I've been keeping up with you. And thank you for being, for one thing, for being a teacher. That's just unbelievable. I have very strong feelings about this. I have never been a teacher, aside from how you and I use technology and try to help and teach others about it.
Yep.
But it is a true privilege to always talk to those in our communities who, teachers, doctors, you name it, the dentists I went to yesterday, you all matter. And society is built on, as they say, hardworking people like you. Not to sound political, but you do invaluable work, even of course at the university, also through your efforts. And I just got to say thank you for doing all this stuff. I don't know how you do it all.
It's you do it because it's fun and it's good times. So
not to mention having taking care of your family and regular day-to-day life stuff.
I got a few other things to do in the basement, but it's all good. Get to it all eventually.
Yes, and Port Alberni. I didn't expect that, if I'm being honest. Nothing against it. It's not until I again discovered you. I suppose it's Red Deer in a sense.
Or working class town.
Yeah, working class town. Yeah.
Yep.
People think of the big cities, but obviously people living in smaller communities make a huge impact too.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I'll let you. I will let you go again. Thank you for making the time. I'll try to edit this down below 2 hours if I can, and not to mention the sound bites and the different things to help promote it. I have a bit of work in front of me.
Cool. I'm happy to have done it. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun, and we've covered a lot of ground. I'm tempted to turn it into a two-parter, if I'm being honest, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
It's just so we talked about so much. Oh my goodness. And I just love all of it, and I love how you think like I do, and in terms of things. And if the final thing I will say in this, I wish that I had taken that kind of a career path as well. I wish it had occurred to me to become a teacher and to teach people about technology. I don't regret a lot of how my career has gone so far and working from home and helping people that way. But there is absolutely something that it's valuable to have that in classroom experience, and to what I imagine is inspiring the next generation to go out there and not just get a diploma or a degree, but to tinker, to play with things. They're going to remember that for the rest of their lives.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's not something, honestly, back in the day when I graduated from, it was called ITAS at Malaspina, my 2-year diploma, I thought it was the 2000s. It was the tech boom. I thought I might be off in America somewhere with some tech job. And here I am 20 years later at VIU teaching people and still playing with technology. And it's great. It's great. Yeah.
I can tell you're still passionate about it now.
Yep. It's fun.
It's fun. Awesome. I'll let you go. Thank you for this conversation, Chris. It's been a true pleasure and a privilege.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, talk to you on Mastodon.
Talk to you on Mastodon. Thank you. And I'll let you know when this gets released. And I cannot wait for people to hear this. All that you've said, but particularly about the petition.
Right on. Right on. All right.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good night.
See you later.
I really enjoyed talking to you. That was a great conversation, don't you think? I really enjoyed talking to Chris every time I talk to him. We really get along well. And it's honestly a great sign when you lose a little bit of track of time and you're enjoying yourself. You look up at the clock and, oh my goodness, didn't realize that much time had passed. that usually means you're having a great conversation and a lot of fun. Please check out Chris's federal petition to encourage politicians to use more open platforms like Mastodon for what they share on social media, and so that they're not beholden to the whims of corporate social media, though I'm sure they'll continue posting there as well. His petition is quite popular on Mastodon itself, and it's being shared other places as well. It's well over 630, last I checked, 630 signatures, which you're not signing it per se. You're adding your name to it. So there's no signatures, just you're adding your name to it, you put your address, you're making it kind of official. They can contact you if they want to, email, phone number, that kind of a thing, but there's no signature. Please check out my blog post regarding his petition. I have more details there. I linked to everything Chris and I talked about in the show notes. You can check out that blog post over at KevinTheTechGuy.ca. Look under the More menu at the top and click on Kevin Talks Tech Podcast. You can also go to KevinTheTechGuy.ca/KevinTalksTech or simply KevinTalksTech.ca and you'll end up in the right place. Thank you so much for watching or listening. This episode is a little longer than usual. I would like to keep them under an hour going forward, but I won't suddenly cut off a conversation that's going well. That said, you can watch or listen wherever you want, and for as long as you want. That's the nature of podcasts. You have that control. My home-based business is KevinTheTechGuy.ca. I offer free and paid premium content, mostly with how-tos and explainers for as little as $5 per month. Please subscribe and support my work. Your support makes my work possible. If you're a home business owner and would like to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to me by KevinTheTechGuy.ca, and we could talk about how you're using technology. I prefer to talk to home business owners, but if you're a fascinating person, I might just want to talk to you anyway. You can search for Kevin the Tech Guy and find me on most social media sites, or simply check out the links I have over at KevinTheTechGuy.ca. Thanks again for taking the time to watch or listen. I appreciate it.